The first thing everyone noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that settles when something is wrong and no one wants to be the first to name it. The second thing was the bruises, dark finger-shaped shadows blooming along the waitress's wrists and creeping up beneath the thin fabric of her sleeves. And the third thing, the thing no one expected, was the way the biker gang leader sitting in the corner booth slowly lifted his head and looked straight at her, as if the entire noisy diner had disappeared and only the truth remained. If you believe that kindness can come from unexpected places, that broken people can still protect others, and that second chances are real, take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us why humanity still matters. The diner sat at the edge of a small town that most people pass through without stopping, a place where neon lights buzzed through cracked glass, and the smell of grease clung to everything. It was called Mercy's, a name that felt almost ironic to the woman working the late shift. Her name was Lena, and at 26, she carried herself like someone much older. Her shoulders were always tense, her smile practiced and careful, as if she'd learned long ago that too much joy invited punishment. She moved between tables with mechanical efficiency, refilling coffee cups, clearing plates, avoiding eye contact whenever she could. The regulars noticed the bruises, of course, they always did, but like most things in town that made people uncomfortable, they pretended not to see. Lena had grown up just a few miles from that diner, in a house that looked warm from the outside and felt like a trap on the inside. She'd learned early how to read moods, how to stay quiet, how to survive. By the time she was old enough to leave, she believed survival was all life had to offer. Dreams felt dangerous. Hope felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. So she stayed. She married young, moved into another small house, and slowly realized she'd traded one cage for another. The bruises on her arms weren't new. They were just more visible tonight because the long sleeves she usually wore were in the wash. That was the night the bikers came in. They arrived like a storm. Leather jackets, heavy boots, engines still rumbling outside as if they hadn't decided whether to stay or go. The town had learned to recognize them over the years. They weren't local, but they passed through often enough that rumors followed them. People whispered words like dangerous, violent, trouble. Mothers pulled their kids a little closer when the bikes roared by. The sheriff watched them with narrowed eyes but rarely interfered. At the center of them all was the leader, a broad-shouldered man with graying hair pulled back and eyes that had seen too much to be easily impressed. His name was Cole Mercer, though most people didn't know it. To them, he was just the man everyone else deferred to, the one whose nod decided whether things stayed calm or turned ugly. He'd spent decades building a reputation that kept enemies at bay and allies loyal. He'd also spent decades carrying guilt that never quite loosened its grip. The road had taken a lot from him. Friends, family, pieces of himself he wasn't sure he'd ever get back. The diner was just a stop, a place to eat before moving on. That was all it was supposed to be. Lena approached their table with a notepad in her hand, her heart racing despite herself. She'd served bikers before. Most were polite enough, some even generous with tips, but the power they carried always made her nervous. As she reached for a coffee pot, her sleeve rode up just enough to expose the bruises fully. The table went quiet. Forks paused mid-air. Cole's gaze lifted, sharp and focused, and locked onto her wrists. Something shifted in him then. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was recognition. Cole had grown up watching his mother hide bruises with long sleeves and excuses. He remembered the way she flinched at sudden movements, the way she apologized for things that weren't her fault. He remembered being too young, too scared, too powerless to stop it. When he finally had the strength to fight back, it was already too late. That memory lived in him like an old scar, invisible but tender. Seeing those marks on Lena's arms felt like someone pressing directly on it. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The men with him noticed the change in his posture, the way his jaw tightened. They followed his gaze. Lena felt it too, that sudden weight of attention, and instinctively pulled her sleeve down, murmuring an apology she didn't owe anyone. She finished taking their order and retreated to the counter, her hands shaking just enough that she had to steady them against the register. The rest of the diner returned to its usual noise, but something had been set in motion. Cole watched Lena as she worked, not with hunger or entitlement, but with a quiet intensity that made her uneasy. He noticed the way she avoided certain tables, the way she stiffened whenever the bell over the door rang, the way she checked the clock with growing anxiety as the night wore on. This wasn't just someone who'd had a bad day. This was someone living in fear. When the bikers finished eating, Cole stood and walked to the counter. Conversations died down again. Everyone watched, waiting for trouble. Lena braced herself, her mind racing through worst-case scenarios. But instead of aggression, Cole placed a folded bill on the counter, far more than the cost of the meal. His eyes met hers briefly, and in them she didn't see threat. She saw something else. Resolve. The bikers left without incident, their engines fading into the night. The diner breathed again. Lena finished her shift and stepped outside into the cool air, pulling her jacket tight around her. She didn't notice the dark shape across the street until it moved. One of the bikes was parked there, its rider leaning against it, helmet under his arm. Panic flared in her chest, but her feet stayed rooted. She was tired of running. Cole approached slowly, keeping his hands visible, his movements deliberate. He didn't crowd her space. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stood there, solid and unyielding, like someone who understood fear and refused to exploit it. He told her he'd seen the bruises. He told her she didn't deserve them. He told her help existed, even if it didn't feel like it right now. He gave her a card with a number on it and said that if she ever felt unsafe, she could call. No questions, no expectations. Lena listened, stunned. No one had ever acknowledged the truth so plainly. No one had ever offered help without asking for something in return. When he left, she stood there long after the sound of his bike disappeared, the card clenched in her hand like a lifeline. The change didn't happen overnight. It never does. But something inside Lena had shifted. The seed of possibility had been planted. Over the next few weeks, the bruises got worse before they got better. Fear fought hope at every turn. But one night, after a particularly bad argument that left her shaking and bleeding, Lena locked herself in the bathroom and stared at her reflection. She saw the woman she'd been, and the woman she might become. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the card and dialed the number. Cole answered. What happened next rippled through the town in ways no one expected. Cole didn't ride in like a vigilante, fists swinging. He did something far more shocking. He used his influence, his resources, and his connections to protect Lena legally and safely. He brought her to a shelter run by people he trusted. He ensured she had a lawyer, medical care, and a place to stay. When her husband tried to find her, he was met not with violence, but with restraining orders, police reports, and a community. Suddenly unwilling to look the other way, the town watched in disbelief as the biker gang leader became an unlikely guardian. Rumors shifted, fear softened into curiosity, then into respect. Other women started to speak up. Other secrets surfaced. The diner became a place not just of routine, but of quiet resilience. Mercy's lived up to its name at last. Lena began to heal. The bruises faded, replaced by scars that told a story of survival. She went back to school. She learned what it felt like to breathe without flinching. Sometimes she'd see Cole's bike parked across the street, not as a threat, but as a promise. He never asked for gratitude. He never tried to control her choices. He simply stayed close enough to remind her she wasn't alone. Near the end of summer, the town held a small festival on Main Street. Music played, lights strung overhead, laughter filling the air. Lena walked through the crowd with her head held high, sunlight on her face. She spotted Cole standing off to the side, watching, his presence calm and steady. For the first time, she smiled without fear. If this story is touching your heart right now, if it's reminding you of someone who needs support or a moment of courage, please take a second to like this video, share it, and let us know you're here. Your engagement helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Before this story ends, we have a special request for you. Comment below with the words "Kindness can come from anywhere" if you believe that compassion doesn't wear just one face. The town never forgot what happened that year. They learned that heroes don't always look the way you expect. Sometimes they wear leather jackets and carry their own broken pasts. Sometimes they notice bruises when others look away. And sometimes, one act of unexpected kindness is enough to change not just one life, but an entire community forever.